Right, I will make a start. So good morning and welcome everybody to Dealing with Rising Energy Costs. I'm Bev Gormley, the Heritage Trust Network's Programme Manager, and I'm joined this morning by Paul Clark from Citrus Energy, and as I said, my colleague Sarah Pearce. For those who don't know us, the Heritage Trust Network is the umbrella organisation for not-for-profits that are rescuing, restoring and reusing historic buildings, structures and spaces around the UK. We've got almost 750 members spread across the 4 nations. So if you're rescuing or running a heritage asset and need some advice, you're in really good company. Recently, we've been hearing from members who are feeling really anxious about the cost of living crisis and the huge rise in energy costs. So we thought we'd ask our partner members, Citrus Energy, if they could offer some insight and some advice. And thankfully, Paul said yes. So I'll shortly hand over to Paul, who will tell you about his background and about Citrus Energy. But I just wanted to point out that if anyone wants a live transcript of what's being said, if you just click the Otter AI button at the top of the screen, well, on a laptop screen, it's at the top. If you're joining from a different device, it might be somewhere else on your screen. And that will bring up a live speech to text transcript if you need it. It would be great if you could add any questions to the chat box as well, as we'll be keeping an eye on that. And we found earlier that Paul's webcam freezes sometimes, but if that happens, don't worry, as you should still be able to hear what he's saying.
Hopefully.
So, yeah, fingers crossed. So that's enough from me. Welcome, Paul. Thank you for doing this, and over to you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for inviting me along. Delighted to be here, and it's also sunny up in Scotland. We are based in Ardrossan in North Ayrshire, and it's not often sunny if anyone's been to Ardrossan or to Arran potentially. It's not often sunny at all. So yes, thanks for inviting us. What I'm going to do today, first of all, I'm going to say this straight away. Right now, in relation to the energy industry, it's a situation we have never been in before. Yeah, and I'm sure everyone's completely aware of that. But we at Citrus, we do our best, and we will do our best to help if we can. So I'm going to give you a bit of a background on who we are and how we operate. I'll tell you about the services that we offer and how we might be able to help. I'll discuss and talk about the current energy market and where it's at right now, especially for organisations like yourself, businesses, charities, social enterprises, etc. And then, you know, I'll invite any questions that you may have, whether I'll be able to answer them or not. And, you know, hopefully, when I start talking about the energy market, it's not all doom and gloom, although that's tough to declare something like that just now. But yeah, so let me give you a background to Citrus and who we are. First of all, we are a social enterprise. We are a social enterprise with a charitable parent company. So effectively, we are not for profit. Our parent company is a housing association. It's Cunninghame Housing Association, who work throughout Ayrshire and Dumfries and Galloway. We set up Citrus in 2012, deliberately as a social enterprise. My background, I was regional director for HSBC Bank for 15 years, and then I left that to work with within the energy sector, worked with energy suppliers, and then worked with energy brokers. And frankly, I got fed up with the corporate ideology and probably the private sector ideology. I think, you know, the lesson I learned at school, but the big thing I took from my economics class was a basic economic problem is greed. And I think we're kind of seeing that right now, you know, and so I decided to leave the private sector and set up a social enterprise because I thoroughly believed that social enterprise was a way forward. Yeah, and it's proven to be very successful for Citrus and for the many people we help. So, you know, as I say, established in 2012, Citrus it's kind of multifaceted. It's all energy related advice and services that we offer. If somebody asks what the summation of Citrus does, what our main prerogative is to help alleviate fuel poverty. Now, that might seem strange that I want to talk about what we can do in relation to helping you guys and your organisations and businesses and charities, etc. But the vehicle that we have to help alleviate fuel poverty starts first and foremost with the fact that we offer a service to help businesses primarily procure cheaper gas, electricity and water prices. Okay, so the way that we operate is we have 4 services. We have Citrus Voids, we have Citrus Domestic Energy Switching, which doesn't do anything right now, and we have Citrus Lemonade. So Lemonade, we provide a frontline service where we go out and help the most vulnerable in society. We have over 350 referring partners, and those are frontline care and support organisations. So citizens advice bureaus, local authorities, housing associations, you know, health and social care partnerships, etc., etc. And they refer people to us to be helped out of their energy situation. But what our model to be able to provide that assistance is, we don't just rely on funding to be able to provide that, although we do get funding. So we get funding from the big lottery, we get funding from Scottish Government, we get funding through Energy Redress to provide those services to people. The main income comes from the fact that we provide a service to businesses. So the model for Citrus is that we have our Citrus for Business service, which is effectively what we are looking to help you guys with, right? And the Citrus for Business services, we act as a broker. So we have relationships with every business energy supplier available in the UK. And what they do is, if we help you, that energy supplier provide us with an introduction fee, and we take that introduction fee and reinvest it in helping people out of fuel poverty. Okay, so you know, that kind of explains, you know, how we operate. We're governed in the same way as a charity would be. We have a board, yeah, which keep us on the straight and narrow. And I have to produce report after report to the board. But you know, it's a good thing from a governance perspective. It keeps us along the right track. Yeah. So how can we help you guys? We, as I say, we've been doing this since 2012. However, most of the staff that we have working here within the business energy side of things came from working for private sector brokers, usually disillusioned by, as I said before, the corporate greed of it all. Yeah. And wanting to be able to provide services to help businesses as much as we do help consumers in relation to fuel poverty. So for a long time, even before this energy crisis, we have been suggesting that businesses are in fuel poverty. There are organisations who go out of business quite simply because they can't afford to pay the gas, electricity and water costs. So we now work with over 3,500 length and breadth of the UK. Some of them are multi-sited. So we have, for example, housing associations who have got 900 plus sites that use our services. So they're classed as one of the 3,500 businesses. But they're very, very busy and they keep us going. So how can we help? So primarily we can leverage our what we call TPI agreements. So those are third-party intermediary agreements with all business energy suppliers in the UK. And what that does is, due to economies of scale, we will find you and your organisation a better energy price than you could yourself. Okay? Basically because when we go to the energy suppliers to ask for prices, they recognise that we're going with thousands of meters. Yeah? So they'll give us a price that reflects that. Unlike a private sector broker, we do not obtain the commissions and fees that they do. Okay, so you know, if anyone uses a private sector broker, we will always say that we will be more cost effective. Okay. Utilising our procurement services, we don't charge you a penny directly at all. Okay, so you don't pay. In fact, for any of the services that we offer, we don't charge you a penny. Okay, we are funded, as I say, through the introduction fee that is paid to us by the energy supplier for passing business their way. Okay, so you know, as I say, in relation to the procurement side of things, we can help with any of your situations. So the big difference, I suppose, between business energy and domestic energy is usually for business energy, you have to be in a contract, and it's usually either a 12-month, 24 or 36-month contract. For domestic, although that did change over the last couple of years where people were signing into fixed term deals, you know, domestic, if you were on a standard variable tariff, you're only held for 30 days, okay? But for businesses, you know, usually you've got a 12-month, 24, 36-month contract in place, okay? So the starting point for us normally, if a business wants us to help them, is we find out what your current situation is, okay? We find out what your current contract situation is. We then assess things like the energy consumption you've had over the last 12 months and try and look at that and get that as accurate as we possibly can. We then look at what you're currently being charged and whether it's appropriate. Okay, so there's lots of, you know, apart from, I'm sure you'll all be aware of a unit price and a standing charge, but there are lots of other charges within that we assess. Things like transmission charges and distribution charges. Things like you may or may not have heard of KVA and maximum demand charges. But we assess all of this. We assess that you're accurately charged before we would go to try and find you better energy prices. Okay, we ensure your sites, if you've got multiple sites, are organised properly. We deal with any historic or future billing issues you might have. Yeah, we check. So, you know, someone's put there a question about half-hourly meters. Absolutely. Half-hourly, non-half-hourly, gas and water. Okay. For anybody that doesn't know, a half-hourly meter is probably these days you would refer to it as a smart meter, but it's been around forever. And it used to be called an AMR meter, which is automated meter reader. Quite simply, the half-hourly part is the fact that the meter reads what you've used every half hour. And it's like mobile phone technology. It sends a signal every half hour with a reading. So you can get accuracy and you hopefully control your use more effectively. But also, if you have a half-hourly meter, it opens up for you potentially sourcing time of use tariffs. And again, I don't know whether people are aware, but you can, as a business, get cheaper tariffs at the evening and weekend. You know, some of you guys may, you know, the sites that you use, the premises, the buildings you use, you maybe use them more at the weekend. That might be the case. So if you can get a cheaper rate, then you do that. So if you've got a half-hourly meter, that opens up for you. Yeah. But, you know, all of these things, so the procurement side of things we deal with, the metering side of things we deal with, we ensure you're on the correct type of meter. We ensure if you've maybe moved into a new building, we can help you get meters installed. Yeah, we can deal with any metering issues you have. In relation to your billing, we provide a free invoice validation service. So the invoice validation service is we check the validity of your billing. So throughout the UK for businesses, there is at least a 25% error rate on your billing. So we ensure that that's accurate going forward. Okay. In relation to energy management, so we can provide energy management reports. Okay, so we can provide you reports that show what you're using in relation to carbon. We can provide reports that compare your budget against actual. Basically, the reports that we devise for you guys are bespoke. So whatever way you want to manage energy better or measure energy better, we can devise a report to suit that. And it might be that you want to provide that report to a board, yeah, or, you know, senior management or a management team. You know, that's why people ask for these reports. We can do that as well. Okay. So, but what I would say, I could keep talking about everything that we do. I'll say this: any energy related issues you have, we can help you with. Okay, we, unlike private sector brokers, we don't profess and proclaim that we'll help you in relation to the physical aspect of energy. So we'll not come along and say you need to install LED light bulbs in your premises, or you need a new boiler, etc. Yeah, but we know people who would. Okay, we know organisations who are similar to us in that they're governed the same way. They're not for profit. They don't come along and do an audit of your premises or your building like a private sector broker would and never tell you that everything's fine. Yeah, if I'm a private sector broker and I come along to your building to do an audit, I'm going to tell you there's issues and I can help you with, because that's how they make their money effectively. We don't do that. We work with organisations like the Energy Savings Trust, yeah, who can help provide a free service. Okay, obviously that it varies throughout the country. In Scotland, there's Business for Scotland, who are the new equivalent of Resource Efficient Scotland, and their job is to try and help businesses reduce their carbon footprint. All right, but as I say, our starting point for that is helping you recognise what your carbon footprint is, so we can help with that. Okay, as I say, any energy related issues, you would give us a shout, and we'd be happy to help, or as I say, we'll know someone who can. Okay. In relation to the current energy market, now hopefully I can keep this as positive as possible, but it's dead hard, because, and to my right, I'm looking at another screen right now that shows me the energy market curve over the last year, and honestly, I've never seen anything like it. Okay, last September, we were procuring for businesses, for electricity, we were procuring an average of 14 pence per kilowatt. Yesterday, we were being offered prices for businesses of 100 pence per kilowatt. Now, that's not sustainable for most businesses, not just the smaller businesses, but for most businesses. Now, that has varied massively. And I'm looking at the market curve, and in the last week, the market has gone from £781 per megawatt. And again, the perspective is this: a year ago, it was £70 per megawatt. But it's gone in the space of a week from £781 per megawatt to just above £400 per megawatt. But still, when you compare £400 a megawatt against 70 last year, it's huge. It's absolutely huge. Now, right now, we are hoping that the UK government, what they came out with last week was that potentially for businesses, charities, social enterprises, they will provide a £40 billion pot to help over the next 6 months. And they suggested that what would happen is business rates for both electricity and gas would mirror those that they've put in place for domestic energy users. What they've put in place for domestic energy users, just so you know, is an average of 34 pence per kilowatt for electric and 10.6 pence per kilowatt for gas. Now, as I said to you, we're being offered prices between 80 and 100 pence per kilowatt. If they go close to that for businesses, that will be a godsend. And it sounds ridiculous that I'm saying a godsend is 34 pence a kilowatt when a year ago it was 12, but it will. Yeah. And again, a year ago, gas, 3 pence a kilowatt. Now, if it goes to 10, fantastic. But as I say, we've been offered prices of 20 plus just now. So what I'm saying right now, the help that we can offer you guys in relation to procurement, we are telling everybody to hang fire until it's digested what's going to happen for businesses. Okay? The hope is that prices come down massively compared to what they're sitting at right now, but we don't know yet. Okay, so the current energy market, it's unrealistic. It's not sustainable for the country at all. Okay, there's been many reasons for it. There's been, you know, initially it was about the green agenda. You know, almost a year ago when it started increasing in the wholesale market, they said that was because we're moving from fossil fuels to green, and then it changed. It's a, you know, it's a byproduct of lockdown. It's because demand has suddenly increased and supply has diminished. They talked about the fact that there's less nuclear power stations producing than there was before, and that's all about because of the green agenda. So use that as an excuse, and obviously then came the war in Ukraine. Yeah. Now, you know, as most people potentially know here, the UK only sources 4% of its gas from Russia. The issue is the wholesale market's a commodity market. Yeah, and you know, the energy suppliers in the UK are effectively retailers. The majority of the people you'll get prices for your premises are retailers. They buy from a wholesale market, and the only wholesale market they use is effectively the international wholesale market for energy. Yeah, and that's been skewed by demand and supply. And for example, in the likes of Germany, etc., where Russia provided 50% of their gas production, obviously they're not getting that now. So when there's more demand to source gas elsewhere, price goes up. Yeah, because that's a private sector economy market. It's all about demand and supply. So the hope is that continues to come down. The hope is that UK government intervention will potentially reduce prices to a level that is manageable right now. But again, I would suggest for 6 months, it's not enough. It's not enough to do that for 6 months, because you know what our business is going to do in 6 months' time. Where's it going to go in 6 months' time? Now, if I look at the sustainability of my business, I need to look 4 or 5 years in advance, not 6 months. Okay, so but you know, at the end of the day, if you guys are interested in utilising our services, we'll provide regular updates just now. And then when the market comes down again, we will help you if we can. Okay. In relation to the type of businesses, premises that we help, we work with everybody. We're very conscious that the makeup of your premises potentially will be hard to heat. I don't know if I'm right or not there. That they might be older premises. Yeah, they might not be, you know, energy efficient. Yeah. So for me, it's more important than ever that you keep your energy prices as low as we possibly can. Get it for you. Okay. I think I've kind of covered everything that we would normally cover. As I say, you know, any energy related issues, we'd be delighted to welcome, you know, you guys getting in touch with us. Okay. So yeah, you know, any questions? I'm happy to try and answer them if I can.
Thank you, Paul. That was great. We've got a question from Karina in the chat box. She says, we're currently at the feasibility stage of a possible transfer of an old 1930s old school. Currently, utilities are with the local authority. Can you get cheaper deals than the local authority?
Well, again, it depends. I'm doing a report just now for 2 local authorities in Scotland. They currently procure their energy through Procurement Scotland. So it's a coming together of all local authorities, and I'm sure that'll be exactly the same throughout the UK. Yeah, but and what I've highlighted to them was Procurement Scotland procured 3 years ago, and they procured when prices were low. Right now, they tell every local authority that bulk buying is the way to go. Contrary to that, I produced a report showing Glasgow City Council that the average electricity and gas price they procured 3 years ago, we would have procured for gas half the price that they got. And for electricity, we were 2 pence a kilowatt cheaper than the price they got. Because what happened was the Procurement Scotland basket went to market with 28,000 electric meters and 20,000 gas meters. So the smaller, potentially more cost-effective commercial energy suppliers couldn't cope with the scale, so removed themselves from the tender. So contrary to bulk being a benefit, it meant that there was only 2 people bid for the tender. So that could be exactly the same throughout the UK with other local authorities. As I say, the theory behind bulk buying, for me, the most cost-effective bulk buyers are the energy suppliers themselves. Because they're certainly, whether it's, 100 local authorities coming together, most energy suppliers will have more customers than that. Yeah. So they'll be able to procure more effectively. So, so, I mean, it's hard to say. It's hard to know whether we'll be able to find better prices now, because obviously if for example, Procurement Scotland go to the market on the 1st of April 2023, they'll only be able to procure the wholesale price that every energy supplier is procuring. Okay, so, we don't know. And as I say, the theory behind bulk, for me, might still not work for them. Okay, so it's hard to know whether local authorities will be able to procure, because they're going to the same market as the energy suppliers.
Great, thanks, Paul. We've got a couple more questions in the chat box. Marietta from Cunninghame Housing Gardens. Hello, Marietta. She says, one small way to bring consumption down is not to use, which means we might be moving to the Hanover model, i.e. no heating in public places. What do other organisations think of no heating in corridors, retail spaces, etc.? And Paul, have you heard of other people doing that?
Yeah, out of necessity. But I mean, if you guys are potentially inviting public, you want the experience of them coming along to be decent. They don't necessarily want to walk into buildings that are absolutely freezing. Yeah. So I mean, out of necessity, yeah. I mean, we've got a local Indian takeaway down here that's now switched off all of their gas, and they're using pellets, to fire up ovens. Yeah. I don't know what the risks are associated with that, but they've got fire pits effectively, cooking their food. But it's ridiculous that it gets to that stage.
Yeah, I've been stocking up on lots of jumpers already. We've got another question from Karen. She says, we only took ownership of our building last week, so have not yet been able to look at changing our energy supplier. We're a community benefit society and have been told it's difficult to get an energy deal with this company structure as we won't have an Experian rating. Is this correct?
There will always be a supplier that can help. Yeah, I mean, we work with sole traders, limited companies, community interest companies, social enterprises, charities. Yeah, there will always be an energy supplier. It will be tough, and the available options will be much lessened, but there'll always be someone. In relation to taking over new premises, obviously one of the first things you need to do is make sure there's a change of tenancy from the previous tenant or person responsible, and that then means that their previous contract becomes null and void. However, we're saying to a lot of people right now, if it's really good and it's still got a year left on it, try and stay where you are if you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Catherine's asking, what about the effect of no heating on an old building? Yes. And I suppose I'd also add to that is that you've got to think about the health and safety of your volunteers, your staff, your visitors. Yeah, I don't know what you think about that, Paul.
It's not good. I mean, we work with lots of housing associations, and there's a massive issue with tenants self-disconnecting. So self-disconnecting effectively is when you just don't use your energy. Yeah. And what that does to the building is they become damp. Yeah. And it causes lots of problems then. And probably costs an awful lot more than if they at least turned their thermostat down massively. Yeah. So no heat or maybe some heat, might help. But I mean, it's awful that people are having to consider doing that.
But
really dampness, I think, is a byproduct of not having any heating on for any length of time.
Yeah, true. I don't know if has anybody got any questions that you just want to unmute yourself and ask Paul?
I'll just voice my last comment. The other thing that I have in mind, and I know we've been discussing kind of in the heritage sector for the last little while, is just the kind of opposite angle of whether, if you've got a community building, community asset, whether when you're running activities and things, you can promote the fact that it is a heated space, and therefore particularly we're conscious over winter. It's the same with kind of food banks and things, and about if we're running activities, can we also be offering a bowl of soup and a bread roll and a meal as well? So kind of becoming more of a hub, so people don't need to put the heating on at home, but they know that for an evening, if they go along to Scrabble or whatever it happens to be, and perhaps they could put a couple of pounds in the pot for that. I'm conscious that maybe then means that, yeah, people at home don't have the higher bills, but you as a community group who are running a building might do. But I think maybe even if it was once a week, then again, you're reinforcing your kind of place as a really key local venue. But it's just something that occurs to me on this topic.
What I'll say, I mean, obviously there is an increase in heat hubs, mainly domestically. There's obviously an increase in food banks, as we know, but there's food larders and food pantries that are becoming a bigger thing. But we've been asked to link in. One of the things that we've done recently in relation to food and fuel poverty is we've sourced £70,000 to pay for air fryers and microwaves. Yeah, because they are more cost effective than a cooker, and they're more energy efficient than a cooker. So we are inviting applications for people to apply for these sort of things, Also, last year I went to Copenhagen. I was asked to talk about social enterprise in Copenhagen, and for years they've had community hubs where everybody goes at night for a bowl of soup, or in a chat and a heat. They've been doing it for a long time. So, yeah.
I think that's something that local government is getting involved with. I mean, in Oxfordshire, they're using libraries as a place where people can go to stay warm, but very much so. But I mean, it's already a very big problem. Our local food bank here has already, for the last 3 months, been running at Christmas levels.
Yeah.
And it's going to get a lot worse.
Yeah. I mean, the big thing that I really get quite annoyed about is the ideology that just capping, which is probably the wrong term, consumer prices at £2,500 a year. Well, they were £1,200 not so long ago. Mm. So they're still doubling.
Yeah.
And we, providing fuel poverty services, we recognise that there was over 7 million people in the UK in fuel poverty already at £1,200 per annum. So £2,500 per annum, and that's the average. In various areas throughout the country where people are potentially off gas, it's even worse than that. So I mean, it's still a huge issue. For it to be £2,500 of a cap. Don't get me started in Ofgem. My opinion is that somebody should be arrested if you're a regulator who treats the priority being an energy supplier going out of business rather than a consumer being able to heat their house. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
it really is. Alistair's just asked in the chat if we want to get in touch with Citrus Energy, how do we go about it? And yeah. I suggest that if I contact everyone, if I drop an email to everyone that's attended this morning, maybe this afternoon, if I put your contact details in, Paul, is that the best way to do it?
Yeah, best way.
Sarah's just put
my contact details, and one of the things that we need to do, just so you're aware, to engage with us, the first thing we normally do is assess what your current contract situation is, and what we need for that is a letter of authority. okay, for the energy supplier to speak to us on behalf of you. Yeah. So what we would do initially would be, send you a letter of authority template. Usually you'd print that onto your headed paper and sign it. It specifically says in the bottom, this does not give Citrus permission to enact any new contracts on your behalf, just to find out about your current situation, okay? But normally to engage, we get the letter of authority completed and one energy bill for each meter that you're responsible for, okay? And we take it from there. And what normally I would do is appoint one of the account managers, okay? So you'll have a person to deal with, okay, and speak to. Brilliant.
That's great. Thanks, Paul. Sarah's also just put the web address in the chat box if anybody wants to.
Apologies about the website. It's being part of a housing association. We rely on their ICT department. And they think very differently to us. But, so it's maybe not the best state it's been in. It's under development, let's say.
Well, you've got more important things to be thinking about. Victoria's said that she's running a beautifully restored Georgian house in the heart of Llanelli town centre. The contract's coming to an end. What should she do? Renew, stay on variable, enter a short-term contract?
Contact us, first of all. And one thing we check, so what happens with a commercial energy contract, if you let it run by the renewal date, is you'll go into out of contract rates. Okay, out of contract rates are not negotiated rates. And the figures I was talking about earlier, about over 100 pence a kilowatt, those are the averages. Now, even now, before we've digested what's happening in relation to the UK government's proposal, even now we will find 40 pence a kilowatt cheaper than that. So don't go out of contract. Give us a shout and we'll see what we can do to help. Now, normally we need a month, however, between your current, when your renewal finishes, and the date it finishes. So we normally need a month to be able to help you set up a new contract, because that's how long it takes suppliers to lock in a new contract. If you leave it shorter than that, you potentially will go out of contract for a week or 2 weeks, or 3 weeks. But contact us, okay? And remember, as I say, business energy is not the same as domestic energy. There is no standard variable tariff. You just go out of contract on the rates that supplier provides an out of contract price at. Okay, and remember as well, there's never been a pricing cap for business energy.
Great advice. Thanks, Paul. Colin's saying where organisations look for green energy, what effect does this have on the market?
Just so you know, green tariffs are lots of organisations who have environmental policies, who have the morality around, carbon footprint, etc. We can get green prices and we can get green gas prices. They are more expensive, right? And if so, everybody gets the same electricity from the same grid. It's just that the premium you would pay for a green energy price helps the supplier to invest in renewable technology. So it's not as if when you sign up for a green, you get it directly from a wind turbine, or it just comes from the grid. It's just that you're paying a premium towards it. Now, we also have, environmental ethics, and we, especially in Scotland, believe that there should be massive investment in renewable technology, because there's nothing cheaper than the wind blowing in Scotland, or the waves or tides, because they're always there. But it comes with a premium. Green prices come with a premium. And again, that, in my opinion, that's not right. Okay, because it's the same electric. It's just that you're paying for suppliers to be able to invest in renewable.
Thanks, Paul. Has anybody else got any questions before? Oh, I've got some questions here that I want to put to Paul, but I'd rather the attendees here today ask their questions directly if you've got any.
I'm waving my hand because the one question, the one that one of I had two big questions. Obviously, it's how can we save money, and because I mean we're a town hall that we're trying to rescue, and obviously it's a public building, so we can't not heat it, but it's ruinous to heat because we have a boiler that nobody can make work properly, so it overheats one room and fails to heat another, and we have a service that runs out of the building, our tenant, so you know we're stuck with it. But as I say, we're trying to raise a lot of money to with a big project to rescue it. It's a timber framed building encased in concrete, so you can see the problems we got. Yeah. But where do you go for advice on, I mean, you say you don't do it, but where can you point us to where's the best way to go for advice on how we could have an energy efficient system in a building like that?
Yeah, I mean, the Energy Savings Trust. The Energy Savings Trust is a good place to start. Okay. Now, it varies between Scotland, England, Wales, Ireland, etc. Right? But I mean, in Scotland, there's also Local Energy Scotland and there's Community Energy Scotland. And these organisations, you know, it's their responsibility to look at buildings, and assess what funding is available. And there is funding available certainly in Scotland. You know, I know straight away for, you know, as you've described, a hard to heat building that has an old boiler or old heating systems. Yeah, there is funding available. Okay. But there's lots of I mean, the Carbon Trust, they're probably less active than they were in the past, but the Carbon Trust, the Energy Savings Trust, and there's lots of local organisations that are funded potentially by the local authority. Okay. But my starting point, you know, would be give the Energy Savings Trust a shout, and they will know in your area who might be able to help with that.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
I'd also add to that on our website, on the toolkit area of our website, we've got a new climate emergency hub, and over the last couple of weeks, we've been adding resources to that area of toolkit. And in particular, I'm thinking of, there's an organisation called Fit for the Future who are run by the National Trust. So they particularly look at historic buildings and historic spaces. And they recently ran a Future of Heating in Historic Buildings conference. It was an amazing day down in London, and they've made available all the recordings of each talk available to us. So we've added them to Toolkit. So please do delve into that and have a look through those recordings as well. There's all sorts on there about heat pumps and heating, and you can go mad just watching it all for a day.
we had an estate manager who had a theory that we could probably actually get a geothermal thing by digging in the ground behind. I mean, the whole town is a conservation area, you know, with a very deep past, and the rest of us were just thinking, oh my God, this is just not going to happen. We'd never be allowed to. But anyway, thank you. Yes, I'll check the website.
Just in relation to the likes of heat pumps or geothermal, again, you know, great in relation to, you know, ticking the green box, but you've got to look at the return on investment. And how cost effective. It's sad but true. I mean, we've had lots of housing associations that have installed district heating and combined heat and power and you know heat pumps. Tenants are going mad because their energy bills, even before now, are much more expensive because they've had to add extra on to pay for the capital expenditure. You know, so you know, it's a nightmare situation.
Yeah,
It is.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Lorraine's put in the chat box that they're currently on a standard variable rate. They heard that you say wait to see what happens with markets before fixing. Have they understood that correctly?
Yeah, again, you know, there's no standard variable rate for business. Yeah, you'll be on out of contract. And it's just a case of, if you want, asking us to have a look at what your current out of contract prices are and find out if there's anything more cost effective. Okay, and all it needs, as I say, is a letter of authority to us, a copy of a bill, and then we'll check it. Okay. Brilliant. It maybe takes about 2 weeks right now, because the first thing we need to do is log the letter of authority with your current supplier, and it should take minutes, but it's been taking over a week for them to log that and give us permission. Okay, so it might take about a couple of weeks before we can assess you know, if there's anything cheaper for you. But then all we do is we present what's available. Okay, so we just present what's available, and then you direct us, okay, as to whether you want to sign up to a new contract or not.
Great, thanks, Paul. There are no more questions in the chat box at the moment. Anybody want to unmute? Liz?
Hi everyone. Yeah, we have a few heritage properties that are either open to the public or are commercially run rather than residential. If we were coming to you and saying this, many of the mills that we have numerous meters, so taking on board the point that you just need a meter reading and a letter of authority. How would you prioritise kind of working through our stock, as it were? Because I appreciate we might sound very greedy if we were to come to you to look at the whole portfolio.
No, it's not. I mean, multi-sites are bread and butter. I mean, you know, I think the average customer that comes to us has got 40 sites.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not, I mean, our starting point there would just be to go through each of the sites. Yeah. So we would need one energy bill for each meter that you have, and only one letter of authority. Okay. And we would go through that site list and assess, because a lot of the time what you find is each have varying contract lengths and different suppliers, and what we do for a lot of multi-sited places is we try and eventually get them on a common end date. Yeah. So, you know, maybe you've got varying renewal dates right now, but we would try and get everything on a common end date. So eventually it's a common start date on a new contract. And eventually you can put everything together if that's what you want to do with the one supplier. So yeah, so multi-sited, various sites, it's our bread and butter. I'd be quite delighted to help with it.
Great, thank you, Paul.
Okay.
Anyone else? Can't see any hands. Okay, I'm gonna ask a question. The team at the core team at HTN put our heads together for some questions. The first one is, when will it all end? That sounds full of doom and gloom, doesn't it? What's the prognosis for future energy prices? Events last week indicate that the war in Ukraine might end faster than we thought. Will that help?
Again, you know, part of me is baffled as to the effect in the UK, why there's such an effect, because as I say, you know, Russia only contributed 4% of gas. You know, so the way it'll end is the UK needs to start, if it's going to keep going down the fossil fuel route, which I think is a mistake, but that looks like what's going to happen, it needs to be able to store more gas. Yeah, if it's going to use more gas to generate electricity, it needs to store more. And so there needs to be, and there's very old infrastructure. I'm sure everybody drives by motorway and sees the massive big drums that used to be, you know, they would go up and down constantly, and that they were full of gas, you know, and they're not used now. But I mean, could it be that those are used in the future? Needs to be more gas storage. I think, you know, the market needs, electricity and gas should be separated. They can't be tied to each other. Yeah. So, but does that suit energy suppliers? And this is the issue. You know, should it be what suits a private sector energy supplier who's beholden to shareholders, or should it be what suits us as consumers? Yeah. And that needs strong governance, and it needs strong regulation, okay, to change the way the market operates. But again, the knock-on effect of consumer prices going to £2,500, will that put so much demand on the welfare state that things have to be done differently? I probably think it will. Yeah, but again, is it too late? I mean, the horse is bolted then. You know, people are then in situations that, you know, they'll lose houses, homelessness will go up. We've already, you know, there's a massive, you know, fuel poverty has a massive effect on health issues. Yep. You know, if people don't heat their house, their arthritic condition gets worse. You know, if there's more and more debt caused by energy, then it could increase things like the suicide rates. It's sad but true. Yeah, you know, we see massive issues around social isolation, where, you know, kids don't invite their pals round to the house because their house is freezing, and they're going to school with damp clothes on, so they're being bullied and being picked on. So there's huge knock-on effects that, you know, nobody can wait. We can't wait, and we've got to recognise that this £2,500 is still far too much. So the kind of answer from me is, when's it all going to end? God knows, but it needs to be sooner, as you know, soon as possible.
Yeah, really good points, Paul. Thanks. We've also got a question which really pertains to the sort of attendees we've got here today. What are the first steps a group should take when they take ownership of a building? Someone here mentioned today that they've only had it a week.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is to ensure there's a change of tenancy from the previous tenant, and we'll do that. So it's just about contacting us with a letter of authority. We don't necessarily need an energy bill. That's just to try and find, you may have heard the terminology, an MPAN. So I mean, MPAN is just a unique supply number for electricity coming into the building, and that's how suppliers identify the supply coming into your building. Or on gas, it's the MPR, right? So, you know, meter point reference number. It's the same thing. So if you've not got an energy bill because you just moved in, just send us a letter of authority, get in touch, and we'll find out all that information. We'll ensure the change of tenancy is done from the previous tenant. And then as soon as the change of tenancy is done, you're open to try and finding the best energy prices. And we will go to market on your behalf to try and find that, give you all the options, and then you select a new supplier. If you move into the property and the meter is antiquated and, you know, there's a potential it should be updated, we'll look at that as well. Ideal scenario, if you're in a decent sized property, you probably should have a half-hourly meter. Yeah, so we will try and get that installed for you as well. Yeah, so as I say, dead simple, letter of authority to ourselves, and we'll do the rest. Just tell us what the situation is, okay?
Brilliant, thanks. Another question, unless anyone else has got one. Anybody thought of anything? No, I'll carry it. We've only got a few minutes left. Jane, did I just see you come off mute?
Yeah, morning everyone.
Hi, Jane.
Unusual question, Paul. We have gas coming into the building,
okay,
to the meter, but then we had to change a plan, so we actually don't have anything even connected to the gas on our side.
okay.
So at the moment we just pay standing charge.
Okay.
Do we legally have to have a company if we've got no gas?
Do you legally have to have a company?
No, yeah, sort of. Do we have to be registered with somebody? Because our current contract is due to end in a few months' time.
Yeah,
and apparently they're threatening to not renew.
Right, if you're not taking gas into the building, you've effectively self-disconnected, right? You don't need a contract. Once the one you've got just now runs out, but you probably should have done a change of tenancy when you removed gas coming into the building.
It comes into the building.
Yep.
But there's nothing connected to our side of the meter once it's in the building.
Okay. If it's in the building, you're not using it, you will be charged a standing charge. Yeah.
And we do have to have that, even though
you do have to have it. The only way you can get rid of it is make sure someone removes the meter.
Right. Okay. Thanks. Because originally it was cheaper to keep the meter and pay £9 a month standing charge.
Yeah.
They're threatening to increase that dramatically.
Yeah.
So it might then become cheaper to take the meter out.
Aye. I mean, that's something we'll look at if you want us to.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Something I never would have thought about. That was an interesting question, Jane. Anyone else? Just got a couple of minutes left. Jonathan, you're on mute. I don't know if he's talking to us or
I think you're on mute, Jonathan. You're on mute.
Mute.
That's you.
Right, sorry. Right, I'll start again. We have a scheduled ancient monument, a Victorian sea fort in Weymouth. Our contract runs out on the 23rd of February next year. When does the 6-month period click in? Because we're sort of 3 weeks away, or 2 weeks away from that 6 months.
Yeah. Well, we don't know yet. I mean, that's the whole thing. The whole crux of the matter is we don't know yet. I mean, yeah. My wife tells me to calm down when I shout at the TV, because you hear, government ministers talking about the fact that most businesses are due for renewal in October. Well, no, they're not. It varies massively when businesses are due for renewal. So it can't. What it looks like on face value right now is they're talking about 6 months help from the 1st of October. Well, that doesn't help anyone, really, but there's no clarity on it yet, Jonathan.
So really, we're going to have to do something about it in early February.
No, in the past, Jonathan, what happens is you might be due for renewal in February. In the past, what we would always start doing is looking for prices for you 9 months before.
Oh, I've been doing it for 3 months.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is right now, most people are leaving it till almost the renewal date before they're looking to find a new contract because of the market issues. Okay, so, but from now onwards, Jonathan, if you want to utilise our services, we'll see what we can find for you. Yeah. In relation to a contract from February onwards.
Lovely, thank you. Right.
Brilliant. Thanks. Anyone else got any questions just before we wrap up?
If anyone thinks anything, Beverly, I'm quite happy. My email will be distributed. If there's anything, then email me directly and I'm quite happy to help.
Brilliant. That's great. Will do. I'm sure people will ruminate on everything that you've said this morning and then we'll be in touch. But just to say then, thank you so much for everyone for attending. I hope that's been helpful for you. Paul, thank you so much for agreeing to do this.
No problem. Thanks for inviting me.
As you can see, it's such an important topic at the moment. We were really hoping we could cover it for our members. If anyone's interested in other events that we're running at the moment, Claire Rose, my colleague, she's here today, and she's running an event this afternoon online called Saving Buildings While Saving the Climate, if you're interested in that. If you go onto our website and look at our events page, we've got lots coming up, including our conference in November, which the tickets are normally very sought after. And I think the early bird ends on the 19th, Sarah. So yeah, if you're planning on coming, get your tickets booked sooner rather than later. There are some elements that have sold out already. So yeah, get in there soon. But yes, I'll be dropping an email to everyone. I'll include Paul's contact details. But in the meantime, do get in touch with either our admin email address that you find on the website or myself, or wait for me to email you this afternoon. But thank you so much, everyone. We'll see you at an event very soon, hopefully.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Yep, bye.